Our next panel is all about AI inclusion and the future of jobs. Obviously, we're not going to be able to tackle everything within 20 minutes, but we're going to try with our next guests. Let's bring them up to the stage. We have, first of all, Rui Duarte, Managing Director of Loop Future Switzerland. Please give them an applause as they slowly come up to the stage. Dr. Chantelle Larsen, founder and CEO of Systematic X. She also calls herself on LinkedIn World's first Chief Human and AI Officer. We also have Christina Hirsch, Executive VP and President of the Board of Digital Trust Business over at Swisscom. Please make yourself at home. And last but not least, we have René, Raeber, CTO of Microsoft Switzerland. Thank you so much. So let's start with a little bit of an anecdote, because when we talk about AI, it can be a little bit overwhelming. How has AI impacted the way you've worked just this week? What's the first example that you've got?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So it clearly didn't do a great job this morning when I had to iron my own shirt at the had to go down to -2. So we clearly didn't reach this superintelligence age. But it did do a bit more when I had to prepare my lessons, and I kind of prepared 6 hours of lessons in a couple of hours, and so that would take me much more. And the catch here is that I didn't prepare the lessons for my students just for, I didn't use AI just for time saving, but I used it to think better and to come up with a better understanding of what I was going to present to my students and how would I teach the classes that I had to teach.
Chantelle, is it all about time saving? How did you use AI this week?
Well, actually, I was on holiday until yesterday, so I used it a lot.
Did it plan your itinerary?
No. So I use workflows, not chat. Chat burns a lot of people out. My workflows did all my marketing for me. I also have a digital twin. I have a real twin, actually, but I have a digital twin that has 25 years of my experience as a retrieval augmented generation. So someone had asked me for a proposal, that quickly did that. Of course, I reviewed it as well. And I have new academies happening next week, so it was onboarding a lot of the new clients. So it gives me a lot of capacity in what I'm doing, but really to enjoy the human piece for me. So South of France was lovely.
Nice. So basically, I went through an exercise with my team this week. I asked every entity to prepare a corridor for 2030 because we have so many changes ongoing. We're quite a technology-driven entity. And I also asked AI, okay, look at this field of business. What would you do to challenge myself if we got all the topics? So I got the future and the present, and it was quite an experience.
And René, last but not least, over at Microsoft.
Yeah, good morning. So as you can see, I'm from the technical side of the house, and so therefore I struggle with admin, okay? This week I started to do all the yearly reviews with my employees, which we do twice a year, career planning, KPI measurements, and all these things. For that purpose, I have like an agent which connects to our HR database, which does pretty much 80% of the work for me. So that means before I probably was busy for one employee half of a day. Now it's probably 10 to 15 minutes. So I can spend more time for the conversation and less for the admin, which is anyway not my strength.
Yeah, and more time to join us here then.
Correct.
Okay, so one thing that is really interesting from what I've heard from you is that when I asked you that question, all you gave very positive examples. But in reality, none of you have touched on any of the threats or potential risks of AI to your job. Would one of you be willing to share your concerns there? I'm going to turn to Chantelle here because I know she has quite a lot to say about this topic.
Well, it's not just about jobs. From an ethical perspective, I think it's got many threats. We're all talking about inclusion, and the data that's in the models are not representative of who we are as people or in life. Ageism was mentioned. We suffer a lot of ageism in Switzerland. Gender is mentioned. We're the bottom for OECD country for 14 years. Race being in that. So when we come to the kind of the threat for jobs, it's really going to radically change our society if we go AI first. Sorry, Microsoft. But in human first, if you go human first, it's about how can we meet society where it's at? So all of the different generations, maybe they want to interact it with in different ways. In some of the manufacturing CEOs that I've heard, you might have someone in their 60s, 70s, not saying they can't use AI, but what's the best human design, possible for them? So I think the threat is that we don't meet people where they're at. There is also, however, a myth of the threat. It's not going to get rid of our jobs. It was always about tasks. My home city is Oxford, and the original research came from Oxford. And it was about 47% of tasks, not jobs, going. So in terms of threats, I've got a concern about the data and how we meet in human design, but actually I'm quite positive in reality about how do we reshape it in an inclusion perspective of how we can do more good for people.
And I think it's fitting here to bring René into the picture to answer from Microsoft, obviously a very technology-driven company. When you design an AI strategy, how do you make sure in the end that humans are at the center of that?
Yeah, so I think it was said a few times already in the morning. So AI is a tool, okay? Let's not confuse that. It's not replacing us humans. It's a tool, hopefully, and it will stay a tool to make us more productive, for example, to delegate activities, tasks, etc., etc. However, what's needed, and this is a systemic paradoxome, it's like a change which is happening here. And to just decorate existing jobs with AI does not really work, okay? So it will have to be a re-architecture of your work, so a redesigning of processes. So what I see, or we see a lot, and that's the interesting part of my job, it's no longer selling technology to technologists, but human interactions. And basically, AI pushes or stimulates for redesigning business processes, and that's a leadership responsibility at the end of the day, and re-architecting jobs. And this is serious because it's happening extremely fast. To give you an example, we have about 250,000 employees worldwide, around 50,000 in software development. We produce now 70% of our software code through AI. So these traditional software developers are no longer needed in such a way. So they can do different other things. Question is, are they capable? Are they educated? Are they willing? So those are serious intermediate steps which have to be taken in considerations. And for that, again, education is key. It was said by our African or South African friends. I had the pleasure myself to have lunch with Nelson Mandela, famous under the name Madiba at the time. Education is the source of everything, but it's not sufficient. It has to be also redesigning of processes and the entire job and work architecture.
You asked a very fundamental question, which is those people where AI is augmenting their work, are they prepared or ready to do other work perhaps? Christina, coming from Swisscom, talk to us about the retraining and reskilling efforts when it comes to AI. How are you seeing that within your workforce? Is everyone on board with that?
We're actually running a huge program right now from top management to everybody in the organization to understand the opportunities of AI and also build a future vision. What could Swisscom look like with AI? And I think it had different impact. For example, in our network division, we already have self-healing components for years that don't only recognize if things go on, they fix themselves, and then they send a protocol to somebody to say, hey, there's been an issue, I fixed it. So it's very normal for the people there to work with what we could call AI. We actually did it before it was named AI. So I think there's already some very good components ongoing. I think the most important thing for everybody, not only in Swisscom, but for everyone, is to play with it and play around with it. If you think back, AI is new now, but I remember my father working with a dictaphone, so he would record on tapes and his secretary would type it. Then he had a computer, then everybody had a smartphone. And so I think we had quite some technical evolution over the past years. We're about to overtake ourselves, but AI right now is just like sometimes a black mirror we see of what happened in the last 20 years. And I think the good thing is that it comes up and we can fix it as technology companies, as society, because we have more transparency on it. But you need to play with it, you have to use it, you have to see the boundaries, but maybe rather treat it like an apprentice and not some perfect tool. And maybe one more thought, I think in the past, especially in Western societies, humans try to be the better computer. And I think AI will just be the next scale of a computer. Like, I wouldn't try to calculate faster than an Excel sheet. No way I'll do it. So I rather use my human skills on what I'm good at, and I leave the Excel to you.
We love that Microsoft is here on the panel. So I have to play the devil's advocate here because, of course, a lot of companies have introduced programming skills to get people up on board, but a lot of the times it scratches the surface. People are not being taught to think critically. They're being taught how to just use the basic AI skills. Rui, I'm going to get your thoughts here on that. You've written a whole book about AI.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes some of the apprenticeships or some of the programs, the reskilling programs that we see, they're not much more than institutional theater. And so sometimes we're just focusing on teaching people how to prompt when we should be teaching people how to judge. And the critical judgment is really the point that we should be teaching people on when facing this new technology, which is disruptive. As we saw in the last panel, we're living through the transition period, and we're living through a creative destruction period and process. So we need to have the critical judgment at the top. And that, most of the times, is not included in these reskilling programs. And also peer mentoring, I would say, it's one of the critical elements for a good reskilling program, or at least a good reskilling scheme, to ensure that, and fundamentally because AI is very much still a contact sport, right? We still need to compare notes. We still need to understand what the others are doing, how the others are doing, and how are they implementing or changing their organizations and applying AI here and there. And so we need to have this peer mentoring capacity and component in the reskilling programs. Let me just finish by adding to what my colleagues have said, that Loop Future is a software company. We're a software boutique here in Switzerland. And we advise companies, we help companies transform themselves. And what we're seeing in the way we're addressing risks is by exactly reskilling and repositioning our business in the Swiss market, ensuring that what we used to have as software as a service now becomes service as a software. And instead of selling the entire consultant and process and output, companies now are more interested in building their own AI capabilities and having the outcome, having the output at the top of their priorities. So this is the shift we're seeing. And I'm sorry to say, but software engineers, at least ours, will not disappear. What they'll do is that they'll make the most of the time that AI will free for them. So those 10% now will become the 100%, where the critical judgment should be the center of the work.
I know, Chantelle, you're going to jump in here.
One thing is that it's really important that we take that thinking that you just said down to the education system, because our education system currently isn't built for critical thinking, creativity. It's very much built around memorization in many countries, and it is so important that they can think. Both my kids have built AI. One has built an AI physics teacher because she's autistic ADHD. She needs really applied thinking, and the books in school are not around that. But it's because she doesn't have a phone, she doesn't have these things, but she has critical thinking, judgment, these skills we need to nourish in our education system.
May I ask, what was going through your mind when Lars was presenting then?
Oh gosh, what was going through my so my kids will actually, so my kids are Danish as well. They will actually go to Scandinavia for a year. The Swiss school system is very memorization focused. We were told in middle school that they were not supposed to still be on the academic route because they're autistic, and normally those people don't get through. She has gotten through, but we would like her to have a refreshing education system. I would just like to see the chairs in circles and not the normal classroom perspective. I would like to see people at the center so that we learn from each other. We don't see one person as the expert and one person as the leader. In the age of AI, no one's the expert. We were actually all learning from each other. So I loved it, and I loved the environment. Sorry, honest answer, autistic ADHD as well.
Lars is taking notes. Yes, Christina.
Maybe just some thoughts. I also really appreciated last presentation, and I think truth is so important. I mean, in Switzerland, but all across Europe, or most parts of Europe, we're really strong on democracy. We saw it, and democracy has 3 pillars. It's the education system, it's information, and it's the voting system. And we absolutely have to work on the education and on the information, because if you cannot detect the truth anymore, then it's very hard to build your own opinion. And I think we should never forget that the internet is still quite a young technology. We had mass adoption of the PCs in the 90s, smartphones only after 2008, 2010, and it keeps on evolving. So I believe that the next level of the internet will be a more trustworthy place where I can more easily detect who I'm dealing with, what is authentic, and we can also use the technology to classify reliable sources and bring that up again. Worldwide, the amount of information which is proven by universities, science, rises constantly, but not very quickly or at the same pace. But the amount of unclassified information has risen tremendously, and it confuses people. It's so difficult these days to find out the truth, and it will become more difficult in the future. So I believe we have to build and use the technologies to make this possible again, and I'm convinced it will come.
Wonderful. Now, René, I'm going to finish up with you. How are you making sure that no one is being left behind at the company? We talk a lot about AI being an equalizer, but we also know that it also tends to leave people out of the system. So how do you make sure that everyone is on board with AI within Microsoft?
So we have clear educational forces which we are using. So first of all, our adoption on the very beginning, and some of you may know this software code, it's called Copilot, which is part of Office 365. Our adoption was quite low in the company as well, okay? We are no different than any other customer or any other human being on this planet, by the way, okay? People always believe, like, yeah, that they work in this company, they invented those things, they must be very different. That's not true. We have the same challenges, first of all. Secondly, what did we do then? It was really about selecting groups in the company which were the tip of the spear. So they were basically doing examples, practical work with these tools which showed great benefits, okay, great advantages. Then we introduced some other forcing functions, something which we call, for example, Copilot Yoga, okay? So every morning...
Copilot Yoga.
Yeah, Copilot Yoga.
Okay.
Every morning, the employee is really forced, it's mandatory to do a 10 minutes exercise with Copilot. That's no longer there now, but it was there for a little while, okay? And this gets measured by the manager and his manager, etc. So we really went through the entire company, and those are a lot of people, to check it out, how they do on that, how they report, what they are doing, etc. Because education in AI means doing things. It's not just reading a book, but really practically apply it in your job, in your work, through exercises. And then after a while, the fire started to burn, and it got in a very high adoption rate.
Okay, so essentially you want people to build a muscle, or train a muscle in
Correct.
AI. Okay, wonderful. So there's a lot of research right now, and all of it points to very similar things. At the end of the day, AI is going to replace more entry-level jobs and more manual work. So that's what we've established. What is going to be left of the workforce then? How do we succeed in this new work?
Well, that's a million-dollar question, I guess.
Yeah.
But,
Can you give us a million-dollar answer?
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think, first of all, I think it's very important that we get this straight and we get this right. And by being here at this event, I think we're starting to do something. And I think people need to have the consciousness that the designers of the society need to take control of this conversation, first of all. We can't let the models design what's the next labor market look like, what's the next phase of the labor market look like. We need to ensure that with these events, with people from different sectors, public and private, that we hold on to the power that we have to design society. That's first. But then I think to your question, and one good news, one thing, I don't know the answer, one thing that I know is that in a few years' time, you'll see thousands more of jobs like agent operators, for instance. Something that already exists today, but it will be at scale much more present in the market. Someone that has to be somewhat technical, has to read the .md files, the MCIs, the CLIs, etc. And at the same time has to breach that technicality with the marketing teams, with the life science teams, with the finance teams, etc., to leverage the power of the agentic AI within the organization. That's something that we're seeing already, and that will be brought at scale as we advance in the AI world. So I don't know the answer. I know this will be a job in a few years' time at scale.
And final thoughts goes to Chantelle. I'm going to rephrase the question a little bit for you, if that's fine.
Oh, I actually hadn't answered that question, but yeah, go on,
Yes,
sure.
yes. Okay, we'll keep it simple because we've got 30 seconds. You're sitting in a boardroom. We're sitting in a boardroom today. What would you tell them to put AI at the top of the agenda? What would be your priority there?
So AI isn't at the top of my agenda for me.
It is at the
About
top of the
solving
agenda, but what
problem.
should be their priority?
It's about identifying what problem they need to solve. So if I went to his question, which is linked to me, it actually was all about inclusion. You will have more time around the customer, the context, the data, the so forth that's missing. Even if it was whichever company, for example, Zurich Financial Insurance, I know they're sponsoring, we have data deficits, which mean that dependent on your nationality, you pay up to 74% more for your premium. There was a piece of research done this year which showed that AI-generated quotes were 40% rejected. So the roles that will come will be the inclusion gap. Inclusion is just about being closer to your customer. So I would say to them is, who are your customers? What problem do you need to solve? And how do humans and AI better solve that for you? Which means that I don't think there'll be a loss of jobs. I think we need to fill the gap and be more human.
Ladies and gentlemen, plenty of food for thought there. A big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much.